patterns repeat themselves, why relationships seem to break in the same way, why opportunities slip through your hands, why inner conflicts keep coming back no matter how hard you try to change. Imagine if all these invisible forces that guide your choices, your fears, and even your desires were not random at all, but rather the result of something deep within you that you cannot yet see. In this video, we are going to explore one of the most powerful revelations from the Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst Carl Gustav Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century. We will uncover the single biggest mistake that most people make in life. This mistake is subtle, almost invisible, but it has the power to determine your destiny without you even realizing it. And by the end of this journey, I promise you will discover not only what this mistake is, but also the single most important key to freeing yourself from it. The last insight I will reveal is by far the most powerful of all, and it has the potential to completely change the way you understand yourself and the world around you. Jung, unlike many of his contemporaries, believed that the human being is not merely a product of external circumstances, but also the result of the complex world of the unconscious. He argued that ignoring this inner world is the greatest mistake we make. We strive to control everything outside of us: our careers, our finances, our image, even our relationships. But we often neglect the inner forces that quietly shape everything we do. Jung insisted that true growth, freedom, and meaning in life come from turning inward and confronting the unconscious. Think about how often we attribute our struggles to luck, to the people around us, or to the events of the world. Yet, as Jung observed, much of what feels like destiny is nothing more than our unconscious mind pulling the strings. He wrote that until we face the parts of ourselves we suppress or ignore, we will continue to stumble over the same obstacles, unaware that they are, in truth, self-created. Imagine a person who continually chooses partners who mistreat them. To the outside world, it might look like bad luck, but Jung would say that this repetition reveals something deeper. Perhaps a hidden wound, a buried belief, or an unconscious pattern that demands recognition. The mistake is not in choosing wrongly. The real mistake is in refusing to see why the pattern repeats. By failing to recognize the unconscious forces within us, we hand over our lives to fate as if we were powerless. Jung's concept of the shadow is crucial here. The shadow represents the aspects of ourselves that we deny, repress, or refuse to acknowledge. These hidden parts of the psyche often carry both darkness and potential. They might be desires we consider unacceptable, emotions we label as shameful, or talents we fear to express. And here lies the paradox. The more we deny the shadow, the more it controls us. So I ask you, what parts of yourself have you been running from? What emotions or desires do you suppress out of fear of judgment? Do you recognize patterns in your life that repeat no matter how hard you try to escape them? These questions are not simple, but they are essential if you wish to avoid the biggest mistake Jung warned us about. The mistake of living a life ruled by the unconscious while believing you are in control. It is here that Jung's work becomes deeply practical. He was not merely a philosopher of the mind, but a guide for those who seek wholeness. He taught that the journey of individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires facing the unconscious, embracing the shadow, and integrating it into your conscious life. Only then can you live authentically, free from the invisible chains of unexamined patterns. And this is only the beginning, because in the next part of this journey, we will uncover how Jung believed our encounters with other people are often mirrors of our own inner world. The very things we criticize or admire in others may actually be reflections of what lies hidden within us. Understanding this will reveal why so many of our conflicts, both personal and collective, are in fact projections of the unconscious. Stay with me, because what we will explore next may forever change the way you see yourself and those around you. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." This simple yet profound statement captures another dimension of the biggest mistake we make in life. If part 1 revealed how ignoring our unconscious keeps us trapped in patterns that feel like destiny, here we go deeper. Our relationships and interactions with others often expose the very parts of ourselves we refuse to face. Think about it. How often have you felt an intense dislike for someone without a clear reason? Or perhaps you admired a person so much that you almost placed them on a pedestal. Jung believed that these reactions are rarely about the other person alone. Instead, they are projections of our unconscious qualities within ourselves that we either reject or long for, but cannot yet acknowledge. This is what Jung called the projection mechanism. When we cannot consciously face a quality within ourselves, we unconsciously project it onto others. That is why we might despise arrogance in someone else, not realizing that it mirrors our own repressed desire for confidence. Or why we might idolize a talented individual, not realizing that we carry that same potential within, waiting to be developed. The mistake comes when we take these projections at face value. We think the problem lies entirely outside of us, in the people we dislike or in the people we worship. But the truth is, they are mirrors, powerful opportunities to uncover the hidden corners of our own psyche. And if we ignore this, we miss a chance for growth. Imagine two people in constant conflict. They argue, blame each other, and cannot seem to find peace. From Jung's perspective, both are projecting unacknowledged parts of themselves onto the other. The hostility is not simply a clash of personalities. It is a clash of shadows. Each one refuses to see in themselves what they condemn in the other. And so the cycle of conflict repeats, fueled by unconscious forces. Now ask yourself, who in your life triggers the strongest emotions in you? Who irritates you, challenges you, or even fascinates you beyond explanation? What if these people are not obstacles, but messengers from your unconscious, pointing to qualities you have yet to recognize in yourself? By avoiding this realization, you fall into Jung's warning. The biggest mistake is to live blindly, blaming the outside world while ignoring the hidden forces within. Jung's insights also help us understand the dynamics of society at large. Groups, just like individuals, project their shadows. When a community demonizes another group, labeling them as the embodiment of all evil, Jung would argue that this is not pure truth, but collective projection. The group refuses to see its own flaws and instead casts them outward. History is full of tragedies born from this collective blindness. The shadow denied does not disappear. It grows stronger in the darkness and eventually erupts in destructive ways. But there is hope in this understanding, because once you realize that your outer conflicts often reflect inner battles, you can shift from blame to responsibility. You no longer see the other as the enemy, but as a mirror. This realization can transform not only personal relationships, but also how we contribute to the world. Jung believed that the healing of society begins with the healing of the individual. When each person takes responsibility for their unconscious, the collective begins to change. So let me ask you, what if the person you dislike the most is teaching you something about yourself? What if every relationship, whether filled with love, conflict, or admiration, is a mirror that reveals your own hidden depths? How differently would you see the world if you lived with this awareness? Jung did not offer these insights as abstract philosophy. He saw them as practical tools for living a more conscious life. He encouraged practices like dream analysis, journaling, and self-reflection as ways to uncover the unconscious and recognize the shadow. He saw dreams, for instance, as direct messages from the unconscious, symbols pointing to what the conscious mind refuses to see. By paying attention to them, we can begin to break free from repetitive patterns and projections. But here is the challenge. Facing the unconscious is not easy. It demands courage. Because when you confront your shadow, you are forced to see truths about yourself that you might prefer to deny. Yet Jung insisted that this confrontation is the path to wholeness. The greatest treasure, he believed, lies where you least want to look. And here is where we prepare for the next step in our journey. If so far we have explored the unconscious patterns that shape our destiny and the projections that shape our relationships, next we will uncover an even deeper truth. Jung's insight that meaning itself is essential to life. He warned that when people lose a sense of purpose, when they fail to connect to something greater than themselves, they fall into despair. And it is this loss of meaning, perhaps more than anything else, that he considered one of the most destructive forces in human existence. Stay with me, because in the next part we will explore why finding meaning is not just a philosophical idea, but a matter of psychological survival, and how ignoring this need is another way we make the biggest mistake in life. Carl Jung once observed, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." With this, he pointed to a truth that reaches beyond psychology and touches the very essence of human existence. Without meaning, life becomes unbearable. We may have comfort, possessions, even success. Yet without a deeper sense of purpose, an inner emptiness begins to consume us. Think about how many people seem to have everything society says should make them happy: money, recognition, security, yet feel a silent despair inside. This is what Jung warned against. He saw that the greatest mistake many of us make is to seek fulfillment solely in the external world, neglecting the inner quest for meaning. Without this quest, the soul starves, no matter how much the body or ego is fed. This insight was not merely theoretical for Jung. He spent decades working with patients who suffered from depression, anxiety, and inner conflict. Again and again, he discovered that their deepest pain was not only about trauma or repression, but about the absence of meaning in their lives. When individuals lost touch with a higher purpose, something that gave their struggles dignity and direction, they fell into despair. Jung even stated that among all his patients in midlife, the root of their suffering was the lack of meaning. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, what gives your life meaning? Is it your work, your relationships, your creativity, your faith, or something greater that transcends you? And perhaps more importantly, have you truly chosen this meaning for yourself? Or are you living a script handed down by society, family, or cultural expectations? This question is uncomfortable, but essential, because living without authentic meaning is like navigating a storm without a compass. You drift aimlessly, vulnerable to every wave. Jung's work reveals that the search for meaning is inseparable from the process of individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are. Individuation is not about becoming perfect or achieving every dream. It is about discovering the unique pattern of your soul and aligning your life with it. It is about listening to the whispers of your unconscious, integrating your shadow, and walking the path that belongs to you and no one else. But here lies another danger. Many people mistake external goals for true meaning. They think, if only I achieve this career, or own that house, or gain this recognition, then I will be fulfilled. But Jung warned that these are illusions. Achievements may bring temporary satisfaction, but they cannot provide the deeper sense of wholeness the soul longs for. That wholeness comes only from integration, bringing together the conscious and unconscious, the light and shadow, the finite self, and the infinite mystery of existence. Jung was deeply fascinated by myths, symbols, and religious traditions across cultures because he believed they carried the timeless wisdom of humanity's search for meaning. He saw archetypes, the universal patterns of the psyche, expressed in stories of gods, heroes, and creation myths. These stories, he argued, are not mere fantasies. They are mirrors of the human soul. They remind us that we are part of something greater than ourselves. This is why Jung believed that a purely materialistic worldview leaves us impoverished. When we reduce life to mere survival or consumption, we sever ourselves from the symbolic dimension, from the deeper currents of meaning that give life its richness. Without symbols, rituals, or myths, we risk losing connection to the mystery of existence. And this, he said, is one of the gravest mistakes of modern humanity. Consider how today many people feel lost despite having more technological advances and comforts than any previous generation. Rates of depression, anxiety, and loneliness are rising worldwide. Jung would likely say this crisis is not merely economic or social, it is spiritual. It is the crisis of a humanity that has lost touch with meaning, that has turned away from the inner journey in favor of endless external distractions. But here's the turning point. You are not powerless in this. Jung believed that each person has the capacity to rediscover meaning by turning inward, by listening to dreams, and by paying attention to synchronicities, the seemingly random coincidences that reveal a deeper order. He encouraged people to reflect on the symbols that appear in their lives because these symbols often guide us toward our true path. So I ask you now, what symbols or patterns keep appearing in your life? What dreams or intuitions whisper to you in quiet moments? What if these are not random, but messages from the deeper layers of your psyche pointing you toward meaning? Ignoring them may be one of the greatest mistakes, but listening to them can set you on the path of individuation, the path to becoming fully yourself. And yet, even this is not the end of Jung's wisdom, because in our final step, we will uncover the most powerful revelation of all, that the greatest mistake is not simply ignoring the unconscious or projecting onto others, or even neglecting meaning. The greatest mistake, according to Jung's ultimate vision, is the refusal to love, the refusal to embrace both oneself and others in their wholeness. Love, in Jung's view, is not just a romantic emotion, but the very force that unites opposites, integrates the shadow, and leads to the fullness of life. Stay with me for the conclusion, because in the final part, we will explore why love in its deepest and most transformative sense is the answer Jung saw to humanity's greatest mistake. Carl Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." In this final stage of our exploration, we come to the most powerful revelation of all. Throughout his life, Jung showed us that ignoring the unconscious, projecting our shadows, and living without meaning are mistakes that shape our destiny in painful ways. But beneath all of these lies, an even deeper truth. The greatest mistake is the refusal to embrace love, the refusal to accept and integrate both ourselves and others in their wholeness. Why love? Because love is not merely an emotion. It is the unifying force that binds the fragments of our being together. It is what allows us to face the shadow without hatred, to see our projections without condemnation, and to find meaning in life even amidst suffering. Without love, the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole, remains incomplete. Jung believed that real love requires courage because it begins with the acceptance of oneself. To love another truly, you must first face the parts of yourself you have rejected. You must learn to embrace your light and your darkness, your strength and your vulnerability. Otherwise, love becomes a projection, an illusion of wholeness that collapses when the fantasy fades. True love, whether for oneself or for another, arises only when we integrate the shadow and accept the totality of who we are. Think about this. How many people spend their lives seeking love outside, hoping another person will complete them, only to be disappointed? Jung warned that when we deny our own inner work, we turn others into carriers of our unlived lives. We project our missing pieces onto them, demanding they fulfill what we refuse to cultivate within ourselves. This leads not to love, but to dependency, conflict, and eventual disillusionment. The transformation begins when you realize that love is not about perfection, but about integration. To love is to embrace contradictions. It is to see another person's flaws and gifts and still say, "I accept you." It is to look within yourself at the wounded child, the hidden desires, the unspoken fears, and say, "You too belong." This radical act of love towards self and others is the path Jung saw as essential for healing. But there is more. Jung's vision of love extended beyond personal relationships. He believed that humanity as a whole is in desperate need of integration. The divisions we see in the world, between nations, ideologies, and religions, are reflections of the unintegrated shadow on a collective scale. Hatred, prejudice, and violence arise when groups refuse to face their own darkness and instead project it onto others. Just as in the individual, the absence of love leads to destruction. So let me ask you, what would change if you began to see every conflict, every judgment, and every act of rejection in your life as a call to love more deeply? Not a shallow or sentimental love, but the courageous love that integrates opposites and seeks wholeness. How differently would you treat yourself? How differently would you see others? Jung believed that wholeness, not perfection, is the true goal of life. And wholeness is impossible without love. To live without love, whether self-love, love for others, or love for the mystery of existence, is to commit the greatest mistake of all. It is to live divided, fragmented, and cut off from the fullness of who we are and from the unity that binds us all together. And so, as we close this journey, let us return to the promise made at the beginning. We began by uncovering the invisible forces of the unconscious. Then we explored projections and the shadow in our relationships. We uncovered the necessity of meaning in our lives. And now we arrive at the most powerful revelation. Love is the ultimate key. Love is the antidote to the unconscious patterns that enslave us. Love is the light that reveals projections for what they are. Love is the soil where true meaning grows. Carl Jung showed us that the human soul is vast, mysterious, and often frightening. But he also showed us that by turning inward, by confronting the unconscious, by seeking meaning, and by choosing love, we can avoid the greatest mistake and instead walk the path of individuation, the path to becoming whole, authentic, and free. So I leave you with this final reflection. What would your life look like if you chose to embrace it fully? Your past and your present, your shadow and your light, your pain and your joy, with love. And what kind of world might we create if each of us dared to live with that same wholeness? Remember, the unconscious will shape your life until you bring it into awareness. But love, deep, courageous, integrative love, is the force that transforms awareness into wholeness. That is the key Jung leaves for us, and it is now yours to carry forward. Thanks for listening.